Okay, now let me see who else I need to let in. Ah, there's Josh. He's coming in. Okay. Lori Colin. Hey, Lori Colin. Melinda Davis.
And hey, Mike family.
Hi, Mike. Elias from Brazil and Nancy from the UK.
Elias, you need to meet Mike family someday. I'm serious. He's a wonderful student of ours he lives in Sao Paulo now.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if we got more and then we'll get started. If there's anybody else in the waiting room. Okay.
So you got an international group.
Tell your mom, I've been out there in the woods since 6 a.m. clearing out, trying to figure out the stakes. I still can't find them.
So for everybody, Lori's
For the
mom.
Vargas lot.
Lori's mom is selling the lot next door to us. So we're kind of hoping she sells it, but hoping she doesn't sell it.
No,
We like having wood.
No, the kids need the money.
We like having wood.
She found 2 steaks yesterday, she said.
Yeah, she was out there chomping in the woods. You love it. All right. Well, you know, welcome to the Intrepid Spirits Huddle. We've got a great friend of ours as the guest today. We'll introduce in a few minutes, Erik Daniels. I'm just going to start with, you know, go to the website, go to the Facebook page. If you have questions today, let us know. Chip, I'm glad to see you're on, and from your finance background, feel free to jump in with any comments or questions as we go along. And Jill, we'll let you go. Jill?
Okay, hey, the sea is dangerous, its storms are terrible, but these have never been sufficient reasons to remain ashore. Unlike timid souls, intrepid spirits seek victory over those things that seem impossible. It is with an iron will that they embark on the most daring of all adventures to meet the shadowy future without fear and conquer the unknown. Thought today, so I'm out in the woods. I get up at 5:30 this morning. I'm out trying to clear the woods because somebody wants to buy the lot next door, and the Tour de France is on. And if anybody knows me, I have no patience. And I thought, gosh, how do those guys ride 150 miles and then at the last kilometer they sprint to the end, the sprinters and stuff today? And I thought about it and I said, patience. And I just wish that I had it. And if I could give anybody anything, I would give them patience. And then I'd give you the ability to seek knowledge to find wisdom. But patience, I just wish I had it. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Susu and have at it, Erik.
Okay, great. Well, today we have Erik Daniels as our guest, and he is a financial planner. And I think, Erik, we met you back in, I can't remember when, in early 2000 or so.
Yeah.
In fact, Max Helton, for those of you on the that know Max, he is who connected us to Erik. And we were, looking for someone to help us with background and principles and values similar ours to help us how to manage our money and our wealth that we've been given the honor to be stewards of. And so Erik and Ron Blue, the company that he works for, came and worked with us, and they even represented us as we sold Ignition, which was quite a blessing because I knew they were looking out for the good for us and not trying to maximize their fee and take on what they would get out of the sale of Ignition. So it was a real true blessing on that. And then Erik, I think, is the only person I know, personally, that's gotten a hole-in-one. Right, Erik? You've gotten a hole-in-one, right? So I'm pretty impressed with that. With Jill and I, we slug out every day and play 8 or 9 holes of golf, and some days are good days and some days are not good days. But yeah, so one day, Erik, I'm going to get my hole-in-one. But with that, Erik's going to share some of those because this is kind of interesting time as far as financials go, and wealth and wealth management, and how to save and how to build your nest egg. And Eric, this is going to be interesting. Through that thing is the compounding interest used to, and I even saw an article the other day about Warren Buffett, how when he was 15 he understood compounding interest. But compounding interest with interest rates so low doesn't work so well maybe for us for right now. So hopefully, Eric, you can share some pointers for us during this time frame of craziness where the stock market's a roller coaster, and we're not sure if we're going to pay checks and if we're going to have a job. I know where Coke, a lot of you guys related to Coke, is going to lay off about 40% of their worldwide workforce, which is quite significant. So, Eric, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Susan and Dale. It's a pleasure. The only reason I can share my wisdom, if I have any, is because I've made mistakes all along the way. And when Susan asked me to possibly speak for this noonday get-together, I offered the possibility of, let me speak a little bit on my mistakes that I've made, which have been an abundance, and then share some principles and truths, and maybe share some of the good things that I've done. So let me start out by saying, first of all, that when I meet with clients or clients' children, or even now as I get older, clients' grandchildren, I tell them 3 things that they need to take into account in building a financially secure retirement. And that is, they need to save personally, and they need to build personal liquidity over a long period of time. The second principle, I call it 3 legs to a stool. The second principle is to maximize what you are allowed to put in your retirement plan. And the third principle is to begin a plan of paying off all of your debt. Now, that's not just automobile debt, that's house debt, that's all sorts of debt, with perhaps the exclusion of business debt, because oftentimes business debt is necessary to grow the business. But from a personal standpoint, those 3 legs, saving personally, saving in your retirement plan, and beginning the process of getting debt free by the time you want to either retire, or my preference is to call it operational freedom. Those 3 principles, and I say that after observing over the years with clients and also friends of mine, that they may end up doing one of those, or perhaps 2, but it is very rare where people will do all 3 of those. So let me give you an example. I remember a gentleman from Procter & Gamble that came to me many, many years ago. He's since passed away. And he had a net worth of probably $6 million. $4 million of that, if I remember correctly, was in his IRA. $2 million of it was the net value of the 2 homes he used. And he had no personal liquidity. So when he retired, he had no personal liquidity. He had all the money he needed in his IRA, and he still had 2 homes that were debt, that had debt on both of them, in fact. So the problem with that is he was required, in order to live a lifestyle that he'd become accustomed to, he was required to take out $400,000 or $500,000 every year to live and to pay down that debt. And when you take out $400,000 or $500,000 of your IRA, you can imagine the taxes on that. So that's why I say that you need to build personal liquidity, you need to pay down debt, and you need to maximize that retirement plan. So that is basically what I oftentimes I'll set the stage in saying, everyone that I talk to, that's the objective. Whether they get to age 45, 50, 60, 70, that's the objective. And if you can get to that point where all those 3 objectives are covered, you will live a healthy and fun-filled retirement plan. Now, from that statement, let me kind of share what I've experienced in my 40 years of being in financial planning. I was in public accounting for about 5 years. And the mistakes I've made are too numerous to count. I remember playing some golf with a friend of mine who had a younger friend that joined us. And we were celebrating my friend's 75th birthday, and it was in Las Vegas. I'm not a huge fan of Las Vegas, but they do have some very nice golf courses. So as we're talking, I think around the third or the fourth hole, this young surgeon who probably was in the range of 39, 40, finds out what I do and starts asking me some questions. And he's quizzing me on this is what he's doing and this is what he's doing. And by and large, he was doing a very, very effective job of managing his money. He was doing very well as a young surgeon. His wife was still working in a big law firm in Indianapolis, Indiana. So I don't know what they were knocking down, but it was a lot of money. And he was doing it, in my opinion, in a wise manner. As we're talking, he looks at me, and I'm probably 62 or 63 at that time. And he says to me, Mr. Daniels, do you have any regrets? And I said, excuse me? He says, do you have any regrets financially or life? And I said, oh my gosh, yes. I've got a zillion regrets. I've made every mistake known to mankind, whether it be in my career, whether it be in my marriage, whether it be in my fatherhood, or whether it be in my money. And then he asked me an interesting question. He said, would you want to do it over again, knowing what you know now? And I didn't hesitate. I said, oh no. And he was stunned. And he looked at me and he said, no, why wouldn't you want to go back? And I looked at this young surgeon who I don't think had any children at that time. And I said, dude, life is really hard. There's a Bible verse that talks about, don't worry about tomorrow. Today's got enough trouble of its own. So I shared with him, no. I'm very pleased with where I'm at, whether it be in my marriage, whether it be in my fatherhood. I've made plenty of mistakes. But by and large, God's graced me with a wonderful family. And at this stage in the game, I'm enjoying life and enjoying working still. So let me begin with going through some of the mistakes that I've made that hopefully you guys can learn from. And I'll do it both from a financial perspective as well as a life perspective. So let me address the life or the financial mistakes that I've made over the years. And probably the first one, and most importantly, is I didn't trust the stock market when I was young or even middle-aged, and even to a certain extent now, even though I'm still heavily in the stock market, I didn't trust it. And the reason I didn't trust it is I didn't understand it early on, in that no one likes to lose money. And when I would save outside my 401k, and many of you probably have 401ks or IRAs, and you're probably maximizing those, or I hope you are, that's a wonderful, wonderful way to buy into the stock market. It's called dollar cost averaging. And if you do that over a long period of time, I can almost guarantee you, not guarantee, but almost guarantee you, that after 20 or 30 years, you're going to have a very nice pile by the time you become eligible for retirement. So from my standpoint, though, I would maximize my IRA or my 401k, but I'd always oftentimes take my savings and I would put it into a CD or a money market fund, some cash, because I didn't want to expose it to the market. Even though as I've gotten older, I've understood that when you save in the market, you have to give it 7 or 8 years to go up and down. So one of my quick comments to each of you out there is when you're in the stock market, just assume that that money is going to stay there for 8 years. If it hasn't, or if you can't keep it there in the stock market for 8 years, you probably should not be in the stock market. The gentleman that led me to the Lord 44 years ago is a pastor up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And he called me a couple days ago and just wanted to pick my brain as it relates to, he was thinking about retiring probably 3 or 4 years from now. And we had a very pleasant discussion. But he made a comment to me that in his church, one of his members had mentioned to him that if you're getting ready to retire in 5 years or less, you should have none of your money in the stock market. And he asked me my opinion of that. And I said, Harry, that's pretty close to being accurate, but it's not. Because if you're not going to take money out of your savings or out of the stock market, then then you can keep it in there for 8 years or longer, then do not take it out of the market. Now, if you need money over the next 5 or 6 or 7 years, I would agree with the gentleman's statement. That should be in cash or in bonds trying to earn 3 or 4%. But for any money that you don't have to withdraw for 8 years or longer, keep it in the market. So that was my first big mistake, in my opinion, in that even when I was saving in my early 20s and mid 30s, even up to early 40s, I was probably too conservative in my investment portfolio. And the reason for that is I didn't really understand that in order to make money in the stock market, you've got to stay in it for an extended period of time. The second mistake that I've made, that I did a reasonable job at it, but I still remember, is in my early 20s, they had back in those days an IRA that you could put in $1,000 or $1,500. And I remember thinking when I was around 24, 25, oh my gosh, you know, I can't get access to this money until I'm age 60, 59 and a half. And I just said, that is so far from now. And I remember missing a number of years in maximizing that IRA. Now, to give you an idea, I wrote down something about the principle of compounding that Susan or Dill mentioned earlier. If you're age 30 now and you've got $10,000 that you've saved, if you were to take that savings and you were to add to that savings $120 a month, so I think that's about $1,500 a year in savings. So if you took that at age 30, that $10,000, and then you began saving $120 a month, and you did that until age 65, you're going to have close to $500,000 in savings at age 65. And I think the return on that was like 6 or 7%, if I remember correctly. Also, if you increase that from $120 to $240 a month, and assume again you're age 30. So at age 30, you start putting, you've not saved a dime, but you have $240 a month that you can save every single month. And if you make 6 or 7%, by the time you get 65, I think you'll have over $650,000 in savings. So when I look at all of my 4 children and I look at other clients' children, there is no excuse, in my opinion, for not having a nice savings amount when you reach age 65 or 70. And trust me, for all you guys that are under age 30 or age 35, life goes by very, very quickly. So I want to encourage you to learn from my mistakes, in that I was not as aggressive, and that word is not necessarily the right word, but I probably would better state it as I was not well positioned in the stock market with money that I had outside my retirement plan. And therefore, I would encourage you guys to invest more in the stock market. You know, you might think that it's high right now, but I don't care. You still invest in the stock market because it'll go up and it'll go down. But if you keep it in there for 8, 9, 10 years, usually probably 80, 85, 90% of the time, you will have a good return, especially when you're considering right now where interest rates are, which is basically zero.
So Eric,
Now,
before you jump to your next point on the the compounding interest, you know, like if you were to put it in a savings account in the bank, you're going to get like 0.2% or something. So if somebody wanted to do the $100 a month to start building in savings, what type of investment tool would they use for that? You would, or what would you recommend?
Great question. I would simply, and I've made this recommendation to numerous young people, is I would encourage them when they get started to open up a Fidelity or open up a Vanguard or open up a Schwab account. And when you open that account and you would put in monthly amounts of savings, I would simply put it in the S&P 500 index fund. S&P stands for Standard & Poor's. And that is the 500, by and large, largest companies in the country. If you want to be more aggressive and you have a long-term horizon, you might go into some of the tech stocks like Amazon and Facebook and Apple and Netflix and Google. But by and large, if you're saving, I like the idea of it being in the S&P 500 index fund until you can get up to maybe $25 or $30 or $40,000. And after that, they need to email me and I'll tell them where to do it after that. Okay, Susan?
Awesome. Yeah. No, because I know that's one thing is for those of us that are older and grandparents, with all of our grandchildren, and we actually started a little late with our children, but we put $100 a month into a mutual fund that Erik does for us. I'm not sure exactly which one it is, but it's been amazing to see for our grandchildren. We've said it's toward their college fund, and that $100 a month, and Nick just turned 14, and I think we've probably got about $20,000 or so in that account for him for future college. And when you do that 100 a month, I know for sometimes it seems hard, but you know, again, we always say, well, how many less Starbucks coffees do we have, right? To take, or how many less beers do we have, or something like that. So it does actually work. And for, you know, for those that are grandparents, it's a great way to help your grandchildren.
It's a very good point. The principle of compounding applies universally. Albert Einstein, and I believe that I've actually verified this statement, Albert Einstein was asked what was man's greatest discovery. And he said, compound interest.
Yeah.
So I Googled that a number of years ago, and sure enough, that came up. Now, if Albert Einstein believes that compound interest is man's greatest discovery, I think it would be wise for us to heed his counsel and implement and execute on that plan. So those are the two probably biggest mistakes that I've made from a financial perspective. Now, I remedied those often or later on, but for you young people, of which I know there's a number of them on the call, it simply is, and Susan brought up a great point. You know, Starbucks is difficult to get out of, I think, for less than $5. And you roll that $5 times 5 days a week, and you got $25. And then you roll it for 52 weeks. That's your savings that I just referred to. Now, you don't want to probably go cold turkey from Starbucks, but you might be able to get a much lesser coffee at Dunkin' Donuts or something else. And it's literally, I made a comment to a client of mine's children and one of his boys and his wife about, had a meeting with them just before COVID. And they're doing very, very well financially, but they're not saving anything. And as we were talking, I made a comment to them. I said, you will enjoy your money more when you are older than you will today. And the husband looked at me and said, excuse me? I said, yes, you will enjoy your wealth more from a psychic standpoint when you are older than you are enjoying it today. And we dropped it. About 2 weeks later, I get either a telephone call or a letter. I don't remember which one, from my young man's wife. And she says to me, it must have been over the telephone. She says, Erik, that made a real impression on me because it's biblical. Is deferred gratification is what I'm referring to. Deferring present benefits for future benefits. And if you can do that, you will be very successful. I know many of you have heard of the story that was done in a Stanford research project back in the early 70s. It was called the Marshmallow Project. And what they did, for the ones that are not familiar with it, they took about, I think it was 25 to 30 4-year-olds, and they put them in a room, and they put one marshmallow in front of them. And they made a simple statement. If you do not eat that marshmallow, we will give you 2 in 5 minutes. But if you eat it, you will not get another marshmallow.
Yeah.
Needless to say, a number of them ate that marshmallow. But the research tracked these individuals for the next 30, 40, 50 years of their life. This was done in the early 70s. And it was remarkable because the ones that deferred their present gratification became much more successful, had higher SAT scores, made more money, and enjoyed life much, much more. In fact, in some cases, a number of them went to prison, and it just showed you the value of deferred gratification. Now, I'm certain that the parents had some influence on those kids at age 4, but it doesn't mean that if they did mess up, they didn't need to change or they couldn't change. But that just underscores the importance of deferred gratification. And I can attest to that personally. I remember missing out on so many things when we were young, raising 4 kids. But I'm enjoying life right now. I still love my job, and spending money is just much more fruitful. Now, let me shift gears, if you don't mind, to some of the crazy mistakes I've made. In addition to those financial mistakes, and I've got many more, but I'm embarrassed to tell you about the other ones. The ones that I think I can reflect back on in life, because we spend money on what we value. That's a very important statement, in my opinion. So when I sit down with clients, I try to gauge, what do you value? Do you value that second home? Do you value that vacation? Do you value security? Do you value freedom? And it's important because I believe personally that the world pushes us sometimes in a trajectory that really does not reflect our values. So you might say that, well, I will say that my dad had a Porsche when we were growing up, and it was a used Porsche, but I loved it, and I wanted one. And it's been now 45 years. I still don't have one. I told my youngest daughter recently that when I got you guys out of college, that I'm going to get myself a Porsche. And then she came to me a couple months ago and said, Dad, you got us out of college. I said, no, but I don't have you out of the wedding costs. And I still have 3 of my 4 that need wedding. So I still don't have my Porsche. I'm going to wait until the weddings. At this rate, I might be 90, but I will own a Porsche. And I can promise you that I'll get much more enjoyment out of driving that Porsche at age maybe even 90 than I did at age 60. But that's the important thing, is that we spend money on what we value. And therefore, one of the major mistakes that I made as I think back is I was not spontaneous enough with my children, and especially my 3 girls, in that I was so consumed with saving money and spending money the right way that I forgot about surprising and the spontaneity and the joy of spending money on people that you love. So I think back and I say, yeah, I wished I would have. And for you young people that may have children or about to have children, just remember that when you've got girls especially, is they love to know that they are loved. And what better way than to spend money on them, whether it's surprising them with a trip, or whether it's surprising them with a new dress, or whether it's surprising them with flowers. I look back and I don't think my children have a regret about it, but I do, because we've got good relationships now, but they could have been better in that standpoint, in my opinion. I just wished I would have been more spontaneous and spent more money on those kids growing up. And I'm probably, yeah, I'm still disappointed. I don't think my kids would say anything, but I wished I would have done a better job.
Right.
Yeah.
In addition,
All right.
Erik, so we're out of time, unfortunately. I know everybody's really enjoying your feedback and thoughts. And so we do have a question, and Elias, what I'm gonna do is I will hook you up with Erik so he can give you some insights on your question. And then if there are any other questions, we'll do that as well. But Erik, this was amazing, and thank you for giving us some insights. And if any of you guys do have some other questions or things, I'm sure Erik wouldn't mind spending a few minutes with you on the phone, right, Erik? Just to give some mentoring and encouragement. And so if you want to have a little bit further discussion, definitely reach out to us and let us know. And next week is Labor Day, so we'll have just a really short group together and celebrate Labor Day. And then I can't remember who's the next, but we've got some really fun people coming up.
Crazy stuff coming up. But here's the thing. For us old guys like me and Mike family, we're closing in on 70, and we go like this. Life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer it comes to the end, the faster it goes. That's just one goofy thought. But another one that I want to share is, what are you chasing? I heard this yesterday from a preacher, and it's like, what are you chasing? Every day as you wake up, you need to really think about what you're chasing. And I'm not going to preach at anybody, God forbid, but I will tell you this. Yeah, I know me, and I'm looking, Mike, at you. We're chasing our health, right? But you're chasing whatever it is. And the only thing I would hope that you're not chasing is a pile of cash. I don't care how young you are, how old you are. I don't want you chasing the money, because I don't think that's a really good thing. And I think if you chase the right things, all that stuff takes care of itself. So Amen. With that, anybody dedication today? Anybody got anything? I dedicate this week again to our first responders and our people. I also, I think about all the police and firemen and first responders that have such a, I'm going to say it, shit show out there, because not enough people are supporting them. And I would say this, that little Johnny Noski is 10 jumps away from making a Navy SEAL, and the instructor got COVID, so they're stuck in the barracks. Not a bad spot though, in North Island and San Diego, but they're stuck there for another couple of weeks, hanging out and doing whatever Navy SEALs do when they're trying to be a Navy SEAL. So anyway, thank you all for being here, and hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! God bless you all. Have a great week. We'll see you next weekend.
Thanks, Erik.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.